Yo, JBlanked here. We're going over how to connect your Raspberry Pi Pico W to your FlipperZero and flash it with the FlipperHTTP firmware. What you'll need is your Raspberry Pi Pico W, your FlipperZero, a micro USB cable, a breadboard, and 4 wires. Let's hop into it. So there are 2 ways to install the firmware. We can either use C++ or there is a MicroPython version. We're going to go over both. So the simplest version is the C++ installation. All we need to do is download the UF2 file, and then we're pretty much going to drag it onto our Pico W, and then it will automatically reboot and start running the firmware. So go ahead and download the UF2 file. It is right here in the GitHub. The link is below in the description. You go and click download, and it will go and download right to your download files. Now for the next step, we need to connect our Raspberry Pi to the computer using the micro USB cable. Okay, so now we need to hold the boot select button on our Pico as we plug in our micro USB cable. Now we're going to hold that button while it's plugged in until we see it pull up as a boot drive on our computer. Now as we're holding boot, again we put in the USB and we keep holding until we see it appear, and you see under my locations, here is our Raspberry Pi Pico W. Now, all we need to do is get our file, it should be in the downloads, and just drag the file over to the Pico W. And as soon as it is finished, your Pico W will reboot. Mine just ejected, and it will automatically start running the FlipperHTTP firmware. Here's a visual representation of what happens whenever you drag the UF2 file into your Pico. So I drag it over there, and once it's done, it'll automatically start running the flash, and we will see 3 green LEDs, and there we go. So now we know that it is running the flash. Awesome, you're all set. Your Pico is good to go with the C++ version of the FlipperHTTP firmware. Now we're going over the MicroPython version. So similarly, we need to download some files, and then we're going to put it into boot mode, and then we're going to flash over the files. So let's go ahead and download the main.py, urequest_2.py, and flipperHTTP Pico.py files, which can be found under the Python folder. You will click on this, click download, go back and do this for all 3 files. There's main.py and urequest_2. Awesome. Now the next step is we need to put our Pico back into bootloader mode, just like we went over before. I'm going to unplug mine, show you that we are unplugged. Now I'm going to hold down the boot select button and plug in my micro USB cable, and here we go, it pulled up again. Great. Now the next step is we need to download Thonny. It is an IDE for MicroPython that works really well. I already have this installed. What you would click on the installation for whichever OS you are running, and then continue. Awesome. Hopefully you have Thonny downloaded. Now we're going to open up Thonny so that we can use MicroPython. Go right up to the top and click Run, Configure Interpreter, and then click Install or Update MicroPython. Under target volume, make sure your volume is selected. Under MicroPython, make sure RP2 is selected. And under variant, make sure to click Raspberry Pi Pico W. And then install the latest version. install. This will copy over MicroPython into your Pico, and then it will restart, reboot, and it will automatically be running MicroPython. Almost done. And here we go. Close, okay. And now here we go. MicroPython, Raspberry Pi Pico W. And we can use this right away. Print. Hello. JBLANKED from YouTube. If I can spell YouTube. Boom. And we get hello JBLANKED from YouTube. Okay, now we're going to put the files that we downloaded earlier onto our Pico, and then we are all set. So to do that, we're going to open this computer, go to where you have the files downloaded, which should be in your downloads, and click on these one at a time. It seems like I have a duplicate, that's okay. Click on the Pico file. And then now what we need to do is go to File and click Save Copy. And then this time click Raspberry Pi Pico. Now this is very important. You need to make sure to type in the same file name exactly. So FlipperHTTP Pico.py, and then hit OK. This will copy it over from your computer to your Pico. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with the other files. So main.py, open. File, save copy, Raspberry Pi Pico, main.py. And then lastly, we need the U request, which I have a duplicate. I guess it doesn't matter because we're going to rename these ourselves. So let's hit open. It's the one we downloaded. File, save copy, Raspberry Pi Pico. And this should not be a duplicate. U request _ 2.py. And there we go. We have all the files that we need. And to see if it works, we can open up our main Pi and run the file. And when we click run, we should see the 3 quick LED flashes. All right, as soon as you hit run, you should see the 3 LEDs on your Pico. There we go. Now you're all set. Your Pico W is good to go. You can unplug it, and whenever you power the Pico W again, this time you do not need to hold that boot select button, and it will automatically start running the FlipperHTTP firmware. Okay, so in this video, we're only going to go over how to use the breadboard. In the next video, I'm going to go over how to solder it onto custom board and pretty much make your own Wi-Fi dev board with the Pico. This was my first design that actually does not work. The second one I did get to work, and it works really well. The third one I tried to make a smaller version that also worked well. It was just really bad soldering, as you can see. And then the current one, which is this one here, this one I did a little bit better with the soldering work, and it also works very well. So with the proto board, it looks like this. This was the second one. Again, the first one I kind of messed up. And then here is the third edition. Yeah, no, the soldering is not the best. And this is the 5th edition. Not the best, but this is literally like the 4th or 5th thing I've ever soldered. All right, let's get to it. Now we're going to connect the Pico W to the Flipper. So I have the diagram pulled up on my computer. Excuse me. We need the TX port, RX. We need a 3v3 out, and we need a ground. So just like I have wired here, we're going to use 1, 2, 36, and we're going to use 23. So keep in mind, this is my like second or third time ever working with a breadboard. I'm more into the software space, so we're not going to be doing the most here. We're not going to be soldering any headers on or anything, but that'll give you the best connection if you want to work with the breadboard long term. But just for our testing purposes, just to show that it does connect and work, we're just going to use a simple wire connection. Okay, so we're going to use port 1, 2, 36, and 23. So I like to use the orange and the green for the UART, and then the blue for the ground and red for the power. Okay, so let's do this. So we want to first hook up the excuse me. We want to first hook up the TX. So what I do is I literally just take the wire, stick it through the port that I want it at. My hands are so big. There we go. And then just stick it down into the breadboard somewhere. We'll use here is fine. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing for our TX. Let's get a good focus on that. And same thing for the RX, which is the second port, the one right beside it. Boom, halfway done already. Look at that. Let's move this camera over a bit. Okay, now let's go to the 3v3, which is the fifth from the top. So this one is 40, next is 39, number 3 is 38, and then we have 37, and then the fifth one right here is our 3v3 out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is where we want to put the red one at. 5 down there. Here we go. Boom. And then our ground is the third from the bottom. Now we can use any other grounds. We could definitely just use 3 here. We could use 3 there. But how I have this soldered and how I'm going to explain it in the video is for you to use the third from the bottom, which is number 23. We're just going to put that right in there. Beautiful. Now we just have to hook this into our Flipper Zero and we are good to go. Alright, great. Now for this, if it's your first time, I recommend you just turn off your flipper. Just hold the back button, hit power off, you're good to go. It's not necessary, but you know, if you think you did something wrong or you just want to be sure, just go ahead and just turn it off. So we're going to hook up our RX and TX, and then we're going to do the ground, and then lastly we'll do the power. Okay, so what we want to do is our TX from the Pico needs to go to the RX of the flipper. So that's so the Pico can send things to the flipper and the flipper can receive it. So this orange cord we're going to put to the RX, which is number 14 on our flipper, just like that. Okay, and then we have the we have the RX of the Pico going to the TX of the flipper, and that is so excuse me, that is so the flipper can speak to the Pico. Let's just lay that down. Excuse me. And then now we want to hook up our ground, which is over L13, the third one. Great. And now lastly, we want to hook up our 3v3 power. So this red cord is gonna go way in between. This guy is the first port right there. It's number 9. Here we go. Boom, we are all in there. Okay, and now as soon as we turn on our flipper, it will power up the our Raspberry Pico W, and we will see the 3 green flashes, just like we did before. Power on, and 1, 2, 3. There go our 3 flashes. So we're good to go.